Hi, and thanks for joining me for this 30-minute yoga practice. I'm Andrea. Super glad to have you here. For this practice, I'm going to strongly recommend a chair because we're going to actually use it in the practice. Sometimes it's just a softer suggestion, but I think you're going to really need that for our practice today. I'm standing on a yoga mat. If you don't have one, a carpeted area, someplace that's not too slippery is going to work just fine. I suggest a folded blanket to sit on a little bit later. And also, I have 2 blocks. If you don't have blocks, some thick books will do the trick. Once you're set, let's stand and face the long edge of our mat. It's probably the best setup for you to have your mat facing me. I may move my mat a little bit. You don't need to move yours. But we'll begin facing the long edge of your mat, standing in Tadasana, which we know to be the bedrock of all poses. And then just play with your balance a little bit, and that's a key word in this practice, is to stay playful. We're going to get into our hips quite a bit in our practice today. You could say that we're going to get a little hypnotized. So if that's not playful, I don't know what is. You can go a little side to side, just playing with balance. And then settle into stillness and notice that actually stillness has a little bit of subtle movement to it too. Turn your palms away from each other. Let that stand you into majestic mountain pose posture. We build it from the ground up. Let your hips be over your heels, shoulders over hips over heels. Lean your head back just a little. Look at that bright horizon out in front of you. So it's ears over shoulders, over hips over heels. Let your breath come in and out through your nose. And try if you can to let that be true from now until the end of our practice today. Rich, deep inhales and complete exhales. Now here in our mountain, we want to find our feet in the ground. You might call them our deep roots, because we're going to grow a tree out of our mountain. You might already want to use your chair for this, so you can always move over to your chair for this little balancing moment. In fact, I will join you in that. And then from your mountain, standing on your left leg, extend your right leg out in front of you. Turn from your hip, your toes to face sideways, and then create a kickstand with your toes on the inside. That's where putting your hand on your chair might be helpful. We're just getting started. Sometimes it's a windy day for our trees. It could be that you start to venture your foot into the calf area, but we want to keep a solid feeling of mountain, in our left hip. And then just see if you can gaze at the bright horizon. Maybe your arms go out to the side, thumbs to the sky. Couple moments here. And then just turn your right knee forward and step hip distance. Looks like I would have benefited from using my chair for balance too. So see, no shame for any of us. And then hands on your hips, or maybe one hand on your chair. Shift your weight now onto your right foot. Extend your left leg out in front of you. Toes to the sky. Turn it out at the hip joint. We've often done this together where you feel it at the hip joint and then create your kickstand. Hug the outer right hip in. It's great to stay here with your kickstand, maybe hand on your chair. You could take your left foot into the calf area of your right foot if you want to, and then perhaps you grow wide branches here in your tree, and it could be one wide branch and one very carefully placed hand on your chair. Sometimes with that reassurance of the chair, the bright horizon is a little bit easier to come by, you know? And then from here, turn your left knee forward, step back into your mountain and fully inhabit your mountain. Now, if you moved around to find your chair, like I just did, step back to the middle of your mat and into your mountain pose. And then take your arms out to the side wide with thumbs to the sky. This will be our measuring stick. Step your feet approximately as wide as your arms are. So think ankles under wrists, just about. Turn your right leg out, much like a moment ago when we had our hands on our hips and we created our tree pose. And then cheat your left heel back at about a 45-degree angle. And first, just bend your front knee to try it on for size. So we want to make sure that our right foot's facing the short edge of our mat and that we have a vertical line from the knee to the ankle. So I can see that I needed a little bit more space, front and back. That might be true for you. Now, just for a moment, straighten that front leg and take your arms to the sky, thumbs to the sky. Pause for a moment. Come back into your breath. And then rebend the right knee and extend your arms wide out to the side. A few things that we want to find. Basically, our tree pose in that right hip. And remember, we're getting hypnotized a little bit, so that's our focus. That right hip hugs underneath you. You're standing as if to be standing in your mountain and your back leg. If ever you need to go back to what we all did together a moment ago, which was straightening the front leg and taking the arms up, or even straightening the front leg and taking the arms down, then make sure that you allow yourself to do just that. From here, right forearm across your right thigh, left thumb remains up to the sky. Take a little bit of a karate chop action into your right forearm and convince that right thigh bone a little bit to the right. So we're feeling that tree pose live on in our right hip. Stay for a few steady breaths here. If it's too long in our warrior pose, remember, an advanced yoga practice is one where you explore your own agency, you make your own choices. So if you need to come out of the pose before I mention it, that's exactly what you do. And then very slowly, upright in our warrior two, thumbs to the sky. Straighten your front leg, turn all toes to face that long edge of your mat. And then turn your left leg out. That happens at the hip joint, just like with our tree pose. Cheat your back heel back a few inches, so about 45 degrees. Arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky. First, just venture into bending that left knee, that front knee. Hug the left hip underneath you, so it's like you're finding our tree pose in that left hip. And for a moment, arms come a V shape overhead, and we straighten the front leg because maybe we visit this during the hold, and then you can always come back to it. Head back to warrior two if you're ready. Stay with it. Your arms might start to get tired. You could always lower them and bring your hands onto your hips. So like the kids say, you do you, and then find your breath. 3 moments here where you remember tree pose and you remember that your back leg is standing in your mountain, so press your thigh bone into the hamstring in that back leg. Then left forearm across your left thigh, right thumb to the sky. We want to prevent a scrunch of shoulders into ears. So find a little bit of a karate chop with your left forearm. And maybe you can gently convince your left thigh bone over to the left as opposed to collapsing towards the right. And then we just have a couple more moments. If you need to come out of it before I mention it, then that's what you'll do. Now upright into our warrior pose for a moment. And just a couple of breaths. Bring your hands onto your hips for this one. Straighten the front leg. Turn all toes to face that long edge of your mat, and then heel toe till you're about hip distance so that you can move about the cabin a little bit. There are a few props, a couple of options that I'm going to offer up for triangle pose that we're going to do next. If you're going to use blocks, situate your blocks, their tallest, at the two edges of your mat like I'm doing now. If you'd like to use your chair for triangle, you'll move that to the middle of your mat. I'm not going to move it to the middle of my mat, but I want to show you how it is that you would use it. So you'll want it in the middle of your mat so that your hand can go on your chair for triangle that we'll do in a moment. So move your chair around if that's what you want to do. Do that mindfully. All of our movement, including our props, involve mindfulness. And then step out wide like we did for our warrior two. Let's bring our hands onto our hips. Turn your right leg out. Feel it like we did when we did our tree pose, and even when we did our warrior pose a moment ago, and then cheat your left heel back. It's a hip hinge, so we're not side flexion. So thumbs to the sky, hinge at your hips. It's like a little bit of a sassy left hip out to the side, and then reach out and find your chair seat or your tall block. And now we get to get a little oomph, a little stretch into our right hamstring. Keep the hinge at your hip. Imagine growing your bottom ribs as long as your top ribs. And then stay with it here as you press into the right big toe mound. So sometimes it's tempting to collapse to the outside of the foot. And the other thing is there's a little teeny tiny whisper of bend, even though it's a straight-legged pose. So we're not locked into that leg. You can maybe see that on me. There's a little bit of fluidity, you might say, so we don't overtax the joint. We'll stay for a few more breaths here. Now you want to make sure that as we exit, we're mindful. So firm through your feet, lift through your belly, come all the way upright. Turn all toes to face the long edge of your mat. You may want to move the block we just used so it doesn't trip you up at all. Hands on your hips. Turn your left leg so that your left leg is facing the short edge of your mat. And then cheat your right heel back, thumbs to the sky. Now just think of a hip hinge and lengthen, lengthen, lengthen until you find the seat of your chair or that tall block. Right thumb to the sky, and so much space between our shoulders and our ears. We're here for a moment where we create the most space we can with the bottom ribs so they feel like they want to be as long as those top ribs are. Press into your left big toe mound. Appreciate all the sensations that are cropping up in the back of that left leg. And try to keep that micro bend in your left leg so we know that we're working in our muscles. Deep inhales and exhales through your nose. 2 more moments. Just like this, you're doing great. Now remember, our dismount is mindful, so firm through your feet, firm through your belly, come all the way upright. Turn all of your toes to face that long edge of your mat and then heel toe until we're essentially back into our mountain. There are more props for our next bit. You might decide to use your blocks tall. That's going to be very few of us, I think, because it's a pretty deep stretch. I'm going to recommend the seat of your chair, and I'm going to mostly demonstrate with the seat of your chair. So I'm turning at an angle so that you can see me better. You don't need to move your mat, but you're welcome to move freely about the cabin, as long as you do so mindfully. And then stand into your mountain. Once you're standing into your mountain, you either have your blocks about a foot out in front of you at their tallest, or you have the seat of your chair. And that would probably be in front of you. I just don't want to block your view of me. So mine is off to the side a little bit. Stand into your mountain. Start to bend your knees. And then you'll do your best to take your right ankle on top of your left thigh. And that's a lot, and it's probably helpful to have your hand on even the back of your chair maybe. You want to curl your right toes back so you're not floppy at the ankle, and then we'll stay with it here. We don't want to go lower than head below hips. So if you happen to be super bendy, just make sure that you stay with your chest higher than your hips. And you can explore bending that left knee a little bit. We're in a figure 4, which is actually not so unlike our tree pose or our warrior 2 pose, or even our triangle pose. I know they look a little bit different. Stay with it. Like I said, there could be some of you that take your hands to those blocks. I just want you to promise me that you're not going to lower your head lower than your hips. And that might be a tricky thing not to do if your hands are on blocks. 2 more moments. Think length through your spine. Let that be the most interesting and juicy part of the whole assignment. I think it's pretty hip-tastic in that right hip, don't you? Now just make sure that we have that mindful dismount. So firm through your feet and your belly. Maybe keep a hand on that chair, and then place your feet hip distance. Stand into your mountain. Kind of interesting to feel one side is different from the other. We're done on one side and not so much on the other. Then take your left ankle. So we'll start with a little bend in the knees, like a softness to the knees. Left ankle on top of right thigh. Just do your best. I bet hands on the chair is very helpful. You want to curl those left toes back and then make your way with your balance into your hip. Now you want the outer right hip to hug in, even as you bend your knees, and then just find a sweet spot. It doesn't feel extreme. It feels like we're visiting tree pose and our warrior 2 a little bit in that left hip. Remember, you keep your head higher than your hips, especially my friends who happen to be making their way maybe onto tall blocks. So if you're bringing your hands to your blocks, imagine that you want to lift your chest even more. We have a few moments here where our breath dances with some sensation and even a little bit of balance. Remember to hug that standing leg in, so we've got a little bit of strength, a good foundation. 2 more moments here. Now, dismounting carefully. Keep your hand on your chair. Maybe your hands are on your blocks, but firm through your belly so that you mindfully stand back into your mountain. And then just take a second. Feel the effects of our practice so far. Maybe you feel hypnotized already. Now we'll use our props carefully so they're not in our way later, but we want to come to the ground. So inhale, let's take a little half sun salutation, arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, bring your hands to your thighs. Inhale your heart forward, just stay for a second. This feels so good, doesn't it? To press your hands into your thighs and lengthen through your spine. And this is symmetrical, meaning we're doing the same thing on both sides. And so much of what we've done today has involved different things on the 2 sides, which is actually great brain food and good for our bodies, but it's good to come back to center too. Hands onto the base of your chair, or maybe onto your tall blocks as an assist to come down onto the ground. And then just make sure that nothing's in your way. I'm going to move my blocks within reach. You really won't need your chair at this point, so you can move that out of your way even more. This is where our folded blanket is our friend. I like to fold mine so it's a pretty decent bench. And then sitting on your prop edge, it could be a pillow, it could even be a bolster or like something from your couch, a cushion from your couch. Imagine that you're sort of thinking of doing your triangle with both legs at the same time. So a wide-legged seat. This is tight terrain for a lot of us. So it's possible that you want to keep a bend in your knees, because what I don't want, and I'll turn sideways so you can see me, is I don't want us to be struggling here. I want you to be able to stand in your mountain. So a little bend in your knees with our wide leg stance might be really helpful. Once you've situated and you feel like this is a pretty good spot for me right now, palms up or down. Now you're not pushing your legs straight. Remember that micro bend we found in triangle? That's happening here too. Now sit tall and breathe deeply. Give yourself a few moments in this shape just to feel, where is it sticky? And where it's sticky means it's effective. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Now, see if you can bring space into your muscles, and the same thing in the muscles of your mind. So you'll be able to sense the muscles in your body. Sometimes it's a little bit more subtle in our mind, but let that be the mind-body connection that you hear so much about. You're soaking in it. I'm going to be quiet for a full minute while you stretch into your body and stretch the thoughts in your head so things are a little bit more free and quiet, body and mind. Excellent job. That was a full minute of stretch, sort of in your body. I'm going to guess maybe even more so in your mind. The stillness seems like it should be easy, but simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, does it? Now, start to help yourself. So hold the outsides of your thighs, bend your knees and put your feet on the ground. Come off of your folded blanket or whatever you've got going on there. With your feet hip distance, lie down onto your back. You might want to have one of your blocks nearby. So before you lie all the way down, place a block off to your side. Someplace that you could reach it with your hands and then lie your head down. You might want your folded blanket underneath your head like I'm demonstrating now. And it could be folded just as much as it was for that wide leg pose. Or maybe you prefer to have it a little bit less folded. Once you're here lying down with your feet hip distance, think of our figure 4 and cross your right ankle on top of your left thigh. So same thing we did standing. A lot of us are going to feel it just fine, right like this. Some of us will reach for that block, put the block on the ground, and then step our left foot onto the block. And then that gives us a good place to stretch. There are a few of you who can reach your right hand through the space and interlace around your left hamstring or your left shin. See if you can let your head stay on the ground and imagine releasing your shoulders onto the ground. You could even close your eyes here. Relax your jaw, your face. See if there's a little bit more struggle in your shoulders than you need, and let that relax, even if it means that you don't interlace and put your foot on a block. Couple quiet moments here, stretching into our figure four in a different way. Keep breathing. Now, if you're interlacing, just gently release. And for all of us, feet hip distance. We'll construct the second side. So now you have left ankle on top of right thigh, and this might be enough just like this. Some of you will place your right foot onto your block, and that's great. Maybe left hand through the space and an interlace around your shin or your hamstring, and then just let it be easeful. I know that there is a lot going on. You can feel the sensations, but stir in some softness. And I'm going to give you some silence. Just a couple of moments here. Now, if you're interlacing, just carefully release your interlace. And all of us will come hip distance with our feet. If you've got props in your way, move your props out of the way. And if you have something underneath your head, take that folded blanket away from your head. Now walk your feet as wide as your mat and imagine that your legs are a set of windshield wipers. Keep your feet steady where they are. Let your knees spill over to the right. And it's again a little bit of a tip of our hat to our figure four. You can stay like this or pick up your right foot and cross your right ankle on top of your left thigh. It's almost like that reclining pigeon that we just did, except it's spilled over to the side. Just a moment here. Be mindful in this exit too. Put your right foot on the ground if it's not already. Windshield wiper, both knees over to your left. This is plenty. Maybe left ankle on top of right thigh. Your arms are out to the sides. Some of you might like to make a cactus shape. I'm just letting my palms face the sky. If you've got your left ankle on top of your right thigh, gently, carefully release it. Feet as wide as your mat, let your knees fall in on each other, and this might feel good as a place to take our final Shavasana meditation. Snuggle your shoulders underneath you. If it feels okay on your low back, you can extend one leg and then the other straight. And close, maybe cover your eyes. 1 minute here. Please feel free to stay here in your Shavasana final meditation as long as you'd like. If you're ready, extend your arms and legs in opposite directions. Stretch like we're waking up again, refreshed and renewed. Bend your knees and put your feet on your mat if they're not there already. Carefully roll to either side. Use the strength of your arms to bring yourself up to any sort of comfortable seat. You could even sit on your folded blanket. And then palms up or down. Just notice what you notice. A little freedom, a little ease. Take that mindfulness with you. Even as you roll up your mat, let what you do on your mat spill out into your life. I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for practicing with me. Let's do it again soon.